There's yet another thing we may have to do sometimes in our patterns. We may need templates. And I've got two patterns with templates. One is called Shattered Saucers and one is called Cracked Cape Cod. Cracked Cape Cod looks like this. So it's printed out. This particular one does not have the seam allowance added. So when we cut these templates, we're going to have to add the seam allowance. And those templates, after they're cut, are going to look like this. I've used a template plastic, laid it on top, and cut it out. The seam allowance is on there now. If you see this when I lay this over top, I went 1/4 inch outside the drawn lines to make my template. You're going to do that for all 4 of the pieces that are in this design. There are all our templates. That's for Cracked Cape Cod. Shattered Saucers, on the other hand, already has the 1/4 inch around it. So when I cut those out, I cut right to the edge. So you can see that when this covers the paper, I cut it out right to the edge. Your patterns will always indicate whether you need to add that 1/4 inch or not. Some patterns will also give you other information. For instance, Shattered Saucers says arrows equal fabric grain line. So if you look at this pattern, you see that there's an arrow there. That means that you're going to set that on the straight of grain of your fabric. That's what that means. The other indication it says is hash line. That's our seam line. So we know that when we put these two pieces together, our seam is going to be right there. They'll be facing right sides together right there. And then flip open. So those are 2 types of templates you might see. Now, how do we go about cutting those? I've got some strips ready. In Cracked Cape Cod, what I've asked you to do is start with strip sets. So I have you get your strips all ready to begin with. So I have a stack of these strips ready to go. Then we put our template on top and then cut them. Now you can do this many different ways. You could trace around it, scissor cut them if you like to. You could also use the template over top and then use an acrylic ruler and your rotary cutter. That's my preferred method. That's the easiest way I've found to do it, because then I've got my nice ruler edge as well. So if I were to go cut some of these out, let's remove this mat. I know that I put a sharp blade in my rotary cutter, so I could go ahead and cut through all these layers at once. So I'll grab my ruler. For this one, I'm just going to use a little ruler. I'm lining it up with the edge of the template. Now I don't want to cut the template off, but I want to cut right along it. I've made my first cut. Now I could use a rotating mat or just shift it myself. As you can see, this strip allows enough to cut off those edges cleanly. And then we'll rotate it one more time. Your template stays underneath. Now, if you don't have template plastic, that's not a problem. You could also lay the piece of paper right on there. Now, how did I cut those templates? I want to show you that as well. So let's step back one step. This is some template plastic. In order to cut these out, all I had to do was take my template underneath, and I'll use this Shattered Saucers. No, I'll use this one. Lay that underneath. Lay my plastic right on top of it. Now this is the template that does not have the 1/4 inch added on, so I need to remember to add that. I'm going to take my ruler. This time I'm either going to use a rotary cutter that has a dull blade, one that I'm going to need to change anyway, or if you have it, you can use a little craft knife. So I'm going to line up my 1/4 inch on the line and press down and cut it. Let's see if I made it all the way through. I didn't press quite hard enough. Let's press down and cut it again. I'm going to press down and cut it. Then I can rotate it. You could tape this piece of paper underneath there if you wanted to. Keep it in position. I'm going to line up the next edge, add my 1/4 inch, because this template does not have the 1/4 inch included. Use my craft knife, press down, and cut all the way down. And then I have one more cut to make on this one. Rotate it so I'm cutting safely. You always want to cut safely. Line up my 1/4 inch and press down and cut that. Now I always want to remember to label this right away before I turn over my sheer acrylic or sheer template. So I'd want to put my number 1 on there right away. If I wanted to put orientation marks, I've got a few orientation marks about which seams go together. I can put those right on my template as well. And that one's ready to go. It's that simple. So these are a couple of ways we can do some angles for our quilts. One other thing we want to be aware of when we're cutting something with templates. When I stacked my fabric up to use template 1 on there, I made sure that I had all of my right sides facing up and all of the wrong side of the fabric down. That made sure that everything I cut would be going exactly the same direction. The template would be true. So when I go to do my next piece, 2R, when I stack my fabrics, I want to make sure that I leave my fabrics all facing pretty side up. I need to do that so that I don't end up with one template one way and another the mirror image. If I forget to do that and I cut them out with my fabrics folded, that's what's going to happen. Okay? I'm going to have one going one way, one going the other direction, and I'll need to recut because that won't work for this particular design. So you stack them with the pretty side facing up and stack as many as you can, as sharp as your rotary cutter is. So I would just keep stacking these as many as I wanted. Put my template on. Use my ruler. And cut right at the edge without cutting through the template. Rotating it as need be to get the other edges. So today I've shown you a bunch of things about cutting with rotary cutters, some different tips. Oh, look what I did. I added another 1/4 inch. So let's hack that off. Remember, I added it when I made my template, so I can cut that off. So we've learned things about cutting with templates, cutting angles using the markings on our mat to measure and to cut with as well. So lots of fun things we can use in our projects up ahead. So I thank you so much for joining me, and remember, I always like to leave you with a little tidbit that will make your life easier. So things I have learned today is, if you fold your fabric with wrong sides together and cut a template out, you're not going to be a happy camper. So how do I know these things? Done it 1 too many times or 12 too many times. So I thank you again for joining me. Please come back again to Creative Quilting the K-Way, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget, you are exactly where you should be. Have a great day.